guy that's moving to town, Lance Hartzell. He's going to teach art at Dr. Martin Luther College, and I got to know these people, and I'll tell you, in the town of New Ulm, there just weren't that many artistic mentors, and they became very special mentors for me personally. So they've been in my life for that long, and I really appreciate seeing their work as a collection. I've been watching their careers on and off in different art shows and in our personal interactions, and I've known throughout all these years that they're incredibly talented and passionate about their work, and that they do incredible work. What we see here tells us that they've done a lot of work. This is overwhelming, right? This is after editing. After editing, this is what we see. By my count, there's 180-some works here from two artists over the course of 45-ish years when I look at some of the dates. Just to give our campus community a sense of that, what that means, we're really kind of pleased with ourselves when our campus art show has 150 entries. They edited down to 180-some. So, as a visual aid, a visual representation, these are the title tags for this gallery, right, which we haven't quite gotten up yet. We'll get around to that. Please join me in welcoming Lance and Annette Hartzell.
Thank you, Jason. It's really amazing to be here with you folks tonight. We're delighted to be here, and we're really happy to see you here too. You must be serious about art to come out on a night like tonight. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. I'd like to thank Jason too for all the work that he's done on this show. And he's the one that really made it happen and made it the space available to us and the opportunity and everything, and we consider it a real privilege to be here. I'd like to thank Bethany Lutheran College for letting us come and sponsor and to have this exhibition here in your exhibition hall at the Ylvisaker Center. So thank you 3 times, and so we're the Hartzells, and we were introduced already, so we won't tell you our names again. But the show is called Our Story, and we called it Our Story because that's what it is, but I think it'll help to explain all of the art that you see around here. So as we go through our story, you'll get hopefully a little bit more information about the art, and you'll see how it fits into things. So with that, Annette and I are going to talk to you about our life and our story, the path, or the road less taken, I guess it is. Robert Frost was one of the guys that talked about that. But we do consider it kind of a road less taken, and we're hoping that some of the things that have happened to us that maybe are less than common might give you some new insights into the path that art can take sometimes, and help you with whatever you need to be helped with. I'm thinking, though, of maybe there are some art students here tonight, and they're looking ahead to their careers in the future, and maybe this would be helpful to them. So what we're going to do is talk to you separately, and that's going to talk first, and tell you kind of her side of the story, and then I'll tell you my side of the story, and you can see which side is the most believable by the time we get done, or at least you should be able to see how it fits together. And after we're done, then there's going to be some time for some questions if you should have anything like that. So, Annette, are you ready to roll?
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here tonight. You guys, I can't tell you what this means to Lance and I. It's been a long, long time since we've done an opening for a show like this. We used to do them in Alaska all the time, but that was 40 years ago or something. It's a long time. Anyway, I want to thank Bethany Lutheran College also for having us here. I want to thank Jason especially. He has been just wonderful to work with. And I want you as students to know that this is a very talented gentleman. Take advantage of him, learn from him, because someday we're going to say, I knew him when. I truly believe that. And there are other people here who are extremely talented in this department and in the theater department. You are so fortunate. I never had that opportunity. I grew up in Nebraska. It was a farming community. You didn't go to school for art. That was not practical. So anyway, I wanted to tell you our story. Jason came over. He knocked on our door last fall, and he talked to us for about 2 hours about art, and he said that Bethany would like to have an exhibit for us, and he wants us to tell our story. So that's how we came to have that theme. Every story begins in the beginning, and God created us in the beginning. He created me, and He created you. And I believe that He put a little seed packet in each one of us. And in that packet are our talents. And then He sits back and He watches us. I think He had a sense of humor in a way. And He watched to see you discover those talents. Water them, watch them grow, and then He prospered them. So our joint history began when we got married. We graduated from Martin Luther College, and then we got married, and we went to Lance's first call at an intersection in Wisconsin. It was out in the country. It was just a little country school, all 8 grades, choir, and organ. Not too much. Anyway, being a graduate of Martin Luther College, I also got a job in a little town not too far away, teaching kindergarten for 2 years. After 2 years, I knew instinctively this was not my calling. And I had to tell Lance, and this was hard, because we were only making $335 a month. So if I wasn't working, we were, we were poor. So finally, I got up the courage to say, you know what? There's something inside of me that has to come out, and it has something to do with art. And being the kind, loving husband that He is, He says, okay, take a year off, do your thing, and then you can get back to teaching again. So guess what? I'm still getting it out of my system. I never got back there. So I started painting. I had some commissions. I did some shows and stuff, and I was so excited. Some people were buying my art. I didn't, it was really empowering, I thought. And 2 years after I started that, there came a fateful day. Something unexpected, something very exciting, and something that we did not have any idea was going to happen, and it was going to change our lives forever in a dramatic way. The mailman came to the door. That wasn't the thing. But it was what was in his hand. It was a letter from the church in Alaska, Faith Lutheran Church. They wanted us to come, and they wanted us to start a one-room school, the first Christian school in Alaska. Oh my goodness. By the time Lance got to Sincerely Yours, we were packing. I mean, it was exciting. So we sold our old vehicles. We got rid of our horses. We're horse lovers. We had 3 horses, and we had to get rid of them, but okay, well, we'll have some more down the road, we figured. So we bought a little truck. It was a little Ford F-150 pickup, a little caramel-colored pickup. We called it Henry Ford, So Henry, we threw a mattress in the back of Henry, put a topper on, and we were gone. We got to the Alcan Highway. Now, this is 1975. That's a long time ago. There were 1,700 miles of highway. 1,200 of it were not paved. It was either dirt, chuck holes, or mud. And the mud was clay. So it was tough. We went 45 miles an hour for 1,200 miles. And we slept in the back with dirty feet. And they had told us about the hazards of the trip. So we grabbed an extra tire. My dad and Lance built a shield on the front of the car so rocks couldn't get into the radiator, and so they'd be deflected over the windshield. Because if you got in trouble in Alaska on that highway, you had a long way to go to find help. So there weren't hardly any places to stay. There weren't hardly any places to eat. And a few gas stations. I guess that was about it, wasn't it? And the truck was so dirty, we used to write things on it. We said, Muncho Lake or bust. Muncho Lake? What was Muncho Lake? It was something on the map that we saw, so we thought, well, let's put Muncho Lake on there. I'll never forget Muncho Lake. We got there, and I'm telling you, we were attacked by mosquitoes, black flies, no-see-ums. I thought I was going to go crazy. I just get back in the truck. I had heard about miners that had gone just absolutely crazy in Alaska because of the bugs. So now I knew what they were talking about. Well, anyway, we were either dealing with mud or we were dealing with dust. It was very hot. We had no air conditioning. That was an option on a truck in those days. You know, you had to pay extra for that. And who's going to put air conditioning on a truck when you're going to Alaska? That doesn't seem very smart. So it was hot and everything, but you know what? We were so excited. We didn't care. We were on this huge adventure, and it was fun, and we couldn't wait to get there. So we got to Anchorage. Lance busied himself getting the school ready, and I thought, I wonder if anybody around here would buy a painting. So I went looking for a place, and I found an old miner's cabin. The logs were darkened with age, and on top was a roof of sod with grass growing on it. It was called the Homestead Art Circle. This group of women had gotten together, fixed it up, and they were selling their paintings there. So I said, hey, can I put in with you guys? They said, sure. So I went home, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and nothing sold. So I thought, well, this isn't going to do it. Alaska was very expensive in those days to live there. So I love jewelry. All my friends will attest to that. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I could do something with that. So there was a jewelry supply store in downtown Anchorage. I went there, and there was this pendant thing that you put on a chain, and then in the center it was a place that you could decorate or put something there, whatever you wanted to do. Well, I saw it as a canvas. So I poured these little ovals of, plaster of Paris, and I painted little scenes on there. Well, true to form, I couldn't do one. I had to do a couple dozen, you know. So then I get done and I go, what the heck am I going to do with these? So a man in our church was a soldier out at the Fort Richardson Army base, which was on the edge of Anchorage. He says, hey, why don't you bring those out to the office there? I think the women might want to buy those. Okay, we'll give it a try. Got me in there. I sold them all, and I got orders for more. That night, I came home, and I counted out on the kitchen table the equivalent today of $2,100 for these little, and I mean, they were ugly. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing one of these today. Yuck, I'm glad I don't even have one to show you. But you know, you change, your tastes change, and they thought they were pretty, and so that's what mattered. Well, that lit a fire under me. I turned into a necklace factory. I was making them just as fast as I could, and still waiting for my paintings to sell. Well, it was about 3 months, and finally I got a phone call. You sold a painting. I sold a painting. Somebody might want to buy one of my paintings. It was of a horse. And then I thought, well, okay, if I can sell one, I might be able to sell more. But what am I going to paint? Well, I'll paint wildlife. That's what I like, and that's what the people here like. So I started painting all this wildlife. But I knew that little place wasn't good enough. I had to go someplace where people could see, there was more foot traffic to see my work. So, as the Lord would have it, Anchorage at that time had no malls, no fast food places at all. It was completely different than it is today. So they built a little mall not too far from us. And I thought, oh, this is great. So everybody went to the mall. Everybody had to come see the mall. There just aren't that many places to go. When we got in there, I saw on the second floor there was a gallery space that some artists had bought. It was beautiful. It was all glass in the front, beautiful wood, light-colored wood walls. And I went in and I said, hey, you guys, can I sell my pieces here, do you think? And they said, sure, come on in. So I did, and that was called the Garret, and I was with them for many, many years, even after I left Alaska. We had a long history together. Well, so now paintings are selling a little bit faster, but I wanted more than that. I wanted a personal relationship with my customers. I wanted to get to know them personally. I wanted to have collectors that enjoyed watching me paint, maybe coming to my house to see new pieces and stuff like that. So Anchorage is a place that has 9 months of winter and 3 months of bad skiing. So it's not the best weather, in other words. In downtown Anchorage, there was an arena, and some people had taken that arena over and turned it into an indoor flea market so that on the weekends you could rent a space and anybody could come in and sell anything. So there was art and furs and gold and chocolate chip cookies and insurance and tires and whatever. It was a mishmash. But people could come in and get treats and walk around, and they could look at all these booths and see what was there. So it was a lot of fun for them. It was a very popular thing to do. I thought, this is a good place, lots of people. So I went there. When I first got there, I noticed that over in the corner, there was an artist who had several booth spaces. So I thought, well, he's awfully popular. He's got a lot of people. Don't reinvent the wheel. Let's go see what he's doing. So I went over there, and I found that he was making copies of his work. He was making prints, and in those days, prints, nobody knew what prints were. They weren't doing them yet. This was a new thing, and they were some of the first ones to be doing prints. So I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. Because then you don't have to paint or draw every single piece you sell, and yet you can, this is a good thing. All right, so, my little brain, by the way, in my seed packet, there was another little seed, and it was salesmanship. You might have noticed that. So I went and I looked to see how much it would cost to do a colored print. Ooh, that wasn't going to work. So then I thought, well, how about black and white? That'll be good. That was too expensive, too. So I thought, there's got to be a way. I knew a lady whose husband was a land developer. I had met her. And I thought, maybe I could borrow some money from her. So I asked her, and she said, oh, for heaven's sakes, you could have more than that. I said, no, that's how much I need. So I went ahead and I got the money, and I did my first black and white print. I did 500 of them, and they were signed and numbered. So each one was 1 out of 500, 2 out of 500, and I signed each and every one of them. I thought, well, yeah, this is a good deal. They were selling. I was selling them through the galleries and through this flea market thing. I thought, if I can sell 1, can I sell 5? Mm-hmm. So as they were selling, I would tell the people, okay, I'm going to be coming out with a series, and there's going to be 5. And they're saying, oh, okay. I said, keep coming back. They'll come out a little bit at a time, keep coming and checking. Okay, so some of those are here. These are 3 of them right here. This is listening, watching over mom, and the first one I did was called Snowborn. It was a polar bear with a little tiny cub curled up next to him. It was called Snowborn. And that one went over real big. But each one I did sold faster until we sold all of them. We sold 2,500 of them within a couple years. And the equivalent of the amount that I got from those was around 170,000 off those black and white prints. Today, that would be what the equivalent would be. Well, then I thought, okay, now I've got the money. Now I'm going to do a colored print. So my first one was way down at the end there. You'll see a ball beetle with a green hat on it. That one is called Spirit of 76. That was my first one. I was so excited. We're twin color now. And that one sold out in about a year. I think there were 500 of them. Well, this became a snowball. I mean, you know, the more you did, the more you made, the more you could do, and that's the way it went until I was doing one print every month. But I bumped the number up from 500 to 950 because they were selling too fast. So the rest of my prints were all 950. So every month I sat at a table and I would write 1 out of 950 Annette Hartzell, 2 out of 950 Annette Hartzell. Oh, and an interesting thing was starting to happen. I was becoming known and people were liking my work and they were saying, hey, I want to collect every print that you do in this number. So I had a reserved number list of 75 people who always wanted the same number every time I did a print. Well, that was kind of nice. You immediately have 75 sold. And I was also getting in with more galleries now because they were seeing that people liked my work, people were asking for it, and they wanted to sell my work. So I had one gallery that reserved 100 of every print I did, another one reserved 300 of every print I did. They bought these. So immediately upon printing, I had them half sold. And that, it was just, you know, it was a going thing. So anyway, this is going to take way too long, Jason. How can I condense 52 years into half hour? Okay, so, all right, so other things were going on too. The Museum of Natural History in New York had me do their Christmas card. I was with the Dolphin t-shirt in California. I was designing t-shirts for them. I did that for 20 years. I got $0.25 a t-shirt. Whoop. But, you know, they paid me every quarter, and sometimes those checks were over $2,000. So we were selling quite a few. They sold them to Disneyland, SeaWorld, Malibu dive shops, Mall of America. So I did that, and then the Bradford Exchange contacted me. They're the international plate company. I did a series of plates for them. Those sold out very quickly, they told me, little polar bear cubs. Another thing that was happening at that time is that we were moving. We started out in a three-room apartment. Then we went to house sitting to save our money so we could get a down payment to buy a 16 by 32 cabin. We slept in the basement. It was 0 bedroom, 3/4 bath. That was it. Oh, but it was my house, my first house. I loved it. We slept in the cement block basement where all the wiring was taped to the wall and the bare light bulb over the bed. I mean, it wasn't fancy, and my first studio was on the landing of the basement steps. The card table fit right there, and you could scoot a little chair in, but boy, you better be careful or you're going to fall down the steps. And then I put my easel on there, and that was my first studio. Well, that wasn't going to do it. I wanted to have showings in our home of new works that I had. So I wanted to be able to have private showings and invite people. So we bought a townhome, and that was nice. I could do that, but we outgrew that in a hurry. And so then we finally bought a new home in an upper middle class subdivision called Foxhall. It was a beautiful home, 11-foot windows in the front looking out over the Chugach Mountains, cathedral ceilings, and it was beautiful, but we outgrew that. I needed a separate space where I could have a secretary and an assistant, and we needed a housekeeper, and we needed all this stuff. I can't do it all, you know. I've got to have some help. So we decided to build on a studio. We built on an entryway, and then we built it on a gallery over the top of the garage. So when you walked in, it was 23 feet of glass going up, looking out at the mountains. We ordered a custom-made spiral staircase that went up, and as you went up around that staircase, we had diagonal cedar on the wall. You could see all the new works. So I would hang my new paintings there. And as the customers came in and the gallery owners, they could see them. At the top was my secretary, and she had all this beautiful white furniture, and I had it looking like Hawaii. I had big palm plants, and oh, it was pretty. I like pretty, you can tell. So then I divided the room with the white furniture, and on the other side I painted. And my son sat next to me with his little TV and his Legos and his pillow and his blanket. Anyway, it worked out real nice. So this all was well and good. Things were just growing and going great guns. But then in 1985, there was a downturn in the economy. Anchorage and Alaska altogether are boom and bust. You either have one or the other. Well, they were in a boom prior to this. But the oil prices dropped, and we went into the Great Alaskan Recession. And this was hard, because now people didn't have the money that they had. The lifeblood of Alaska is oil. So when oil goes down, everything goes with it. That went on for a couple years, and then came Black Friday. That was October 14th, I believe it was, 1987. And that was when the stock market had its biggest one-day drop ever, 22.6% in one day. So overnight, we lost half of everything we had. All that we'd saved and worked for was gone. Half of it was gone. Oh, man, it was tough. Businesses were closing right and left, boarding up. People were dropping their keys off at the bank and saying, keep our house. We'll not be able to sell it. So there's all these houses sitting empty. We didn't even know who our bank was from month to month because they changed hands so much. There were 200 people lining up every day at the border to get out. They had to get to the lower 48 because they'd lost their jobs and they needed to go find work. So the school was shrinking because of this. There were 3 teachers. Lance said, instead of them going, I'm going to go. We can't afford 3 teachers. The church can't do it. So we got a call to Yakima, Washington, and it was really difficult to leave because here I had this successful business, and it's dependent on me being there. Well, it couldn't be helped. It was the way it was. So we went to Yakima, Washington, and I continued my business there. My secretary said, I'll do the shows up here. You can fly up for the shows, so I did. And she sold at the galleries and stuff, but that was a death blow, that 87 crash. From then on, it was downhill. Instead of going up like it was before, now it was coming down. And, you have to roll with the punches. Being a Christian, I believed that that was for our good. The Lord knew what was best. He knew what we needed and what we didn't need. And we obviously didn't need any more. We'd had our success. But, okay, let's see. After that, the biggest thing in Yakima, I kept doing originals, sending them to Alaska, doing prints, sending them up there, going up there for the shows. So we were still going. I had come off of a very high place. So, it took a long time before we weren't making anything off of art anymore. I mean, we were still doing quite well. But the biggest thing that came out of Yakima was I started painting flowers because they didn't want wolves and bears and whales and puffins. So I got to use color because wildlife is all black, brown, gray. And I was sick of that. I was tired of it. I wanted some color, so that was good. Then we got a call to Martin Lutheran College for Lance to be the art and elementary school teacher, professor. So we moved to New Ulm. I still continued to do shows, but the paintings weren't selling. You couldn't sell them. It was affecting everybody. I mean, this was a worldwide crash on 87. It took the market down. It takes a long time to come back. So people weren't buying that. Well, my little seed was shriveling up. And it needs some miracle grow. So the Lord gave it some miracle grow, gave me an idea. I thought, okay, if I can't sell paintings, I'll just go with the flow and I'll do some crafts. I love doing crafts anyway, always wanted to, couldn't do it because I was too busy with the painting business. So I started making, I did felted hats, I knitted scarves, I made soap, tons and tons of soap. I made jewelry, teddy bears, pumpkins, out of fabric with real stem. Oh, I could go on and on. I made hundreds of things. And I sold those, and it made up for some of the income that we didn't have from the paintings. So it kept going. Well, pretty soon, the shows stopped in Minnesota and around because the other artists who weren't doing crafts, they were not doing well, and things were tumbling for them, and they weren't able to afford booths and shows, and so it was over, basically, as far as I was concerned, as a business. But that didn't mean that it was over. I'll never stop painting. So I thought to myself, okay, what can I do? Well, the Lord has blessed me so abundantly beyond my wildest imagination. Now it's time. Now it's time to give something back. So I started doing the banners for church that you'll see up here. Some of them are still a little curled up, but you get the idea. And so I did those. I would cut off a piece of a canvas and do an oil painting on them. And the people of the church love them, and I loved doing them, and I felt like I was enhancing the services. So from there, well, that wasn't that much. Then Lance and I turned our attention to houses. We went to bigger canvases, because I'm a decorator. That was another little seed in my packet. I was a decorator. So I could do that, and he was tremendous at woodworking and carpentry and stuff. So we've been doing that. Last fall, we finally gave it all up. We fixed all. We had gotten 23 years. We had fixed up, I don't know, a dozen homes. We had 11 of them were rentals, or 11 units of rentals. And, I could go into that whole thing, but I'm not going to. So last fall, I turned 75 in October, and we finished selling our last flip house. Thank you, Lord. It's a lot of work, We're getting too old to do that kind of work. So, you know what? It's getting to be time for you to tell your side of the story. I'm going to tell one more thing. Okay, so while we were up there in 1980, we homesteaded 5 acres of land out in the wilderness. Now, this is a whole nother night. I could stand here for hours and tell you stories about this place. We, when you walk down to the edge of the property, the whole skyline was Mount McKinley. There's no road in, there's no electricity, no water. If you watch those shows on TV about Alaska, that's the way it was. And we had adventures there like I cannot tell you, with the bears and the moose and the people and the crazy guy that was a musher that lived next to us that, he was something else. I could just go on and on about the stories from there. And we had to haul every last piece of lumber, nail, towel, everything across Muskeg with a 3-wheeler and a 4-wheeler. And I'll let you try to figure out, how did we get 2 cast iron wood stoves in there, a propane stove, a propane refrigerator, a queen-size mattress, cupboards, and they were all in perfect condition when we got there. I'll let you figure that out. Okay, Lance, it's your turn.
Thank you for your kindness. Thank you again for being here. I mentioned before that I think that you must take art seriously in order to come out on a night like tonight. And I think that that's probably kind of characteristic of our group, that we have something in common there that not everybody has or appreciates, and that's that we take art somewhat seriously, at least. Now, some of you might be here because your professor has encouraged you strongly to be here, and that's all right. That's good too. And some might have just come because your friends came. And it's good to have friends, and if that's the only reason you came, then you're welcome here. But I just have a hunch that a lot of us have something special about art in our lives, and so that's the way it rolls, and that's the reason that we're here. So I don't know in your life what made you take art seriously, but I'm going to tell you what in my life did. And it'll sort of be an outline of my life and tell my half of the story, and then we'll get to the questions. So why do I take art seriously? It's probably not a real good question to ask, because we're kind of homogeneous group. We all can kind of understand why they could happen. But I taught at Martin Luther College, and the art course there is not elective. You have to take it. And I think a lot of the kids that came through wondered why they should take art seriously and how I possibly could, right? You probably know people like that. So I take art seriously. I'm going to give you 5 reasons, maybe 6. I take art seriously because my dad did. Okay? And maybe some of you have that same reason. But my dad grew up in Indiana. He and his brother built a house when they were in high school. They built it for their older sister and her husband. And he liked that, building houses, and they designed it. You know, they drew the plans and built the house when they were in high school. So he wanted to be an architect. You know, from then on, he wanted to be an architect. But he didn't have really the money, the funds to do that, at first at least, and so he had to figure out something else. He went to work for the light company. He wanted to be an architect, but he went to work for the light company. And then he got drafted, and he had to go to the Army, and so he wanted to be an architect, but he ended up in the service. It was at Pearl Harbor after it was bombed, but they got kind of in on the cleanup, his group. So he took art seriously, and then when he got out of the service, he went to visit a girl who he had been writing to for many months, really. And she was a Lutheran, and they fell in love and got married. My dad wasn't a Lutheran. He was a Christian, grew up in a Christian family. United Brethren is what he grew up. So when he married my mom, who was a Lutheran, she wanted him to be a Lutheran. Sounds like a good Lutheran girl, doesn't it? Anyway, he took instructions from the Lutheran pastor, Prescott, Arizona, which is where my mom was from. And then something powerful must have happened, because he decided as long as he was going to be a Lutheran, he might as well be a Lutheran preacher. And so he went to the seminary, and he tried to go to Northwestern College, and they wouldn't have him because he was married. And Northwestern didn't take married people back in those days. So he had to go to the liberal Missouri Synod Seminary in Springfield, Illinois, and that's where he got his credential, I guess you could say, to be a pastor. So he became a pastor, and he never really gave up on the dream to be an architect, because in his study, he had his desk where he wrote his sermons and visited with people and wrote his correspondence and did that. And then right next to his desk is drafting table. And he's drawn plans all the time, you know, in between writing sermons and doing his correspondence and everything. So us kids growing up in that house, running around, you know, there's Dad doing his sermons and that. But he's got his drafting table there. And so we got this idea that it's okay for a man to be an artist. And that's not an idea that everybody has. Okay? I think there's a lot of girl artists, and I ran into a lot of fellows at Martin Luther College when I was teaching who definitely believed that art was for girls. And you know, they were more into explosives and, you know, football and skydiving and stuff like that. So they wanted to make it plain, you know, that they weren't artists. They didn't want anything to do with that because people might get the wrong idea about them. But I never had to wrestle with that, really, because my dad took art seriously. Second reason I take art seriously is because my wife takes art seriously, right? And now, going back, if your dad takes art seriously, you better take it seriously, too. If your wife takes art seriously, you better take it seriously, because it's just survival. But I wasn't so blind, you know. When I got to Martin Luther College, there was a student-sponsored art show every year. The students put it on, the art club. The student art club actually did. And I was doing art. I liked art. I was painting. I was doing charcoal drawings and pencil drawings and stuff. And I always did a few because I knew that student art show was coming up and I wanted to be in it. Well, girls like art, and they would put stuff in it too, right? And that girl liked art, and she had stuff in the show too. So I said, you know, this art is pretty powerful stuff. You can actually meet people and find the girl that loves you enough that she'll actually marry you. And if something is that powerful and it's legal and it's enjoyable, then you better take it seriously. So I take art seriously because my dad takes art seriously, and I take art seriously because my wife takes art seriously. Third reason I take art seriously is because the president of the bank in Fremont, Wisconsin takes it seriously, or took it seriously. Annette told you that that was our first call out of college. Wonderful place. Wisconsin is a beautiful place, and Fremont was a beautiful place. A rural, agricultural area, and just loaded with good people, good Christian people that took good care of us. But they weren't real wealthy people, and they couldn't pay us a lot. And so we ran into some trouble with finances. And it seems like no matter, how frugal we tried to be, we were always overdrawn. So we got to know the bank president rather well because we had to go see him so many times. But he wasn't angry with us when we came in. We found out that he was serious about art. And he kind of seemed to like us. And he kind of seemed to like our art. And what he would do is buy art for his bank and for his house. And then he would give us the money so that we could pay him back from being overdrawn. Yeah. And he went to the rest of the workers in the bank and he said, if the Hartzells are overdrawn, no overdraft fees. Just cover their checks. And they'll be in to pay, but if they're not, we're going to get some more artwork. So when you see that artwork is actually powerful enough to help pay the bills and bail you out at the bank, you begin to take it seriously even more than you had before. It's got some power to it. And at that time, what we didn't know and hadn't dreamed anything about at all is that in a couple of years, we would be in a place where artwork would not just help to pay the bills, it would pay the bills 2 times over. And all of my teaching money was left unspent. And we didn't even know it was going to happen. We didn't plan it. It just happened because we went to Alaska. That's the place that Annette was telling you about. And Alaska is an amazing place on a lot of different levels. And it was boom times when we got there, as Annette laid out for you. And it was really, really an amazing thing, just to see it. Neither one of us had ever experienced anything like that before. But there's a wonderful market in Alaska because there's tremendous turnover of people. First of all, the locals were doing really well, and they like to buy art. And there's more artists in Alaska per capita than I think in any other state. It's a good state for the arts. They love art up there. And then in addition to that, there are 2 big military bases right near Anchorage. And, thousands of soldiers are coming and going every year. And every time they leave, they want to take some piece of Alaska along with them. And a lot of times it's art. And then there's the tourist industry. And every year there are thousands and thousands of tourists coming through Anchorage, going to all parts of Alaska. And they all leave in a short amount of time, and they want to take something from Alaska with them. And so they buy art. And, the market never gets saturated because they buy it and they leave, and a whole new market comes to town. And that's the way it was. And we had never, seen anything that hot before in the art world. So it was an amazing thing. And I take art seriously because Alaska took art seriously. That's another reason. So my dad took art seriously. My wife takes art seriously. The Fremont banker takes art seriously. Alaska took art seriously. And so we had to take art seriously too. The 5th reason why I take art seriously is because, as Annette mentioned, I got a call to DMLC. It was in those days, and it was that way for 2 or 3 years after I came, and then it changed to MLC. So they called me to be the teacher of art. So the numbers to remember here, when we talk about that motivation in my life, and this is going to sound a little weird, but this is it, okay? Here's the formula. 25 plus a million plus 5,000 plus. Okay? 25 plus a million plus 5,000 plus. And what those numbers are is 25 years I taught there. 25 years they let me stay and teach art at Martin Luther College. The million plus is how much they paid me to teach art for 25 years. And the 5,000 plus is how many students I had in 25 years. So if an institution that you love and want to see prosper calls you and is willing to, have you around for 25 years and pay you over $1 million and give you 5,000 students to work with, you better take art seriously. Right? The last thing they needed is some art teacher who didn't take art seriously. So those are the reasons that I take art seriously. Now, you've probably noticed something about all 5 of those, and I think you've noticed it, but if you haven't, I'll tell you that there's something going on with all of them, and that is this. My dad took art seriously. God gave me my dad. I didn't have anything to do with it. My wife took art seriously. God gave me my wife. I didn't have much to do with it. Right? The Fremont banker. Well, God called me to teach at Fremont. And I ran into that banker. And he boosted our art career and helped us out. And then God called us to Alaska. And I take art seriously because Alaska takes art seriously. And finally, I was called. God sent me, called me at least to Martin Luther College to teach. And so he's the one, really, that is to be given the credit for all of that. So those of you that are art students here, and actually it's for all of us. There's a word of encouragement I want to bring to you, and even if you're not a student, of course, that applies to us too. But I think those of us that have been, in art for quite a long time, we can kind of lean back now and rest on our laurels. But those of you that are embarking on that, there's some uncertainty there. Am I on the right track? Am I on the right road? Is this the right thing to do? Am I going to be able to make it? I would guess that an art student might think that. And so I'd just like to encourage you by telling you that God knows you. He knows where you are. He knows what you want to do. He knows what your gifts are. He knows your name. And he knows the plans that he has for you. In Jeremiah, it says, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. So that's something that you can remember to think about. And I know you all know that verse already. It's Jeremiah 29:11. So you're gonna have that to fall back on, and God is I think he's gonna come through with his promise. And you see that he's interested in art too, I think. And if you don't see it yet, you just think about what he made. You look at the universe, and you look at the earth, and you look at your friends, and you look at everything around. It's his artwork. He made it all so beautifully, and it works together. And he made it so creatively, right? And to make something beautifully that works and is made very creatively really is the very definition of art. So he's the original artist. And that encouragement from Jeremiah is from, the original artist. And he's saying, I know the plans I have for you, you students, you people that are studying all kinds of things here at BLC. So that's our story, kind of. And I'll just say a word or two about some of the art. How are we doing, Jason? Getting close to time? The pottery is kind of in clusters, and the pottery is something that I make because I was interested in it from way back when we grew up down on the Apache Reservation in Arizona. In Arizona, you hike around in the hills, you find old shards all over the place. And as kids, we liked to look for them. It was free, you didn't have to pay anything to go looking for shards, but there were always a little treasure when you found one. And it's pretty common to find them. You don't have to look too hard to find them. And every once in a while, you'll find some with decorations on them still. The old paint is still there. And you have to wonder about what it's all about. So you just get interested in things like that. And then eventually, I got interested in making pottery too. So I was going to school in Mankato here at Minnesota State University, MSU. And I took as many art courses as I could there because I was supposed to be getting a degree to teach at Martin Luther College. And I did. And so I got a little bit of information about how to make a pot from them. But they use wheels a lot. They do hand building too. But I was in the wheel class, and it's a lot of fun. If you ever get a chance to do a class, get a thing to throw some pots on a wheel, you got to take it. But you can make things by hand, and that's the way the old people in Arizona used to make it. The old Indians, they didn't have any wheels. They made it all by hand, and so I kind of wanted to be like them and see if I could do that. So that led me to that. It's kind of arranged in groups, and there's going to be some tags put on there, and that'll explain the groups a little bit better when that happens. The mosaics I also did, and they were a requirement that I had for my students in the survey of art, which is a history course over at Martin Luther College. And it's a history course, but I just thought it was a shame to study all about art and never get a chance to make any. So making a mosaic became one of the requirements for the course. And we went through all the steps, learned about all the ceramics, made all of our own tesserae, designed our own design, and did everything like that. And they liked it. It was an unusual thing to do in a history class, and they liked it. And I liked it because I could make mosaics too. So as each semester went by, I would make one along with the students, and then I just kind of ended up with a collection of mosaics that I brought along and put in the show. And then I have a few paintings over there and drawings, and Annette's stuff is all the rest of it. And I just say, she's really been the main artist in this duel that's here tonight. She's the main artist, and I've always been somewhat of an artist.
Okay, if you're not going to brag about yourself, I'm going to.
I'm the main art teacher.
Let me tell you about his pottery. This pottery is amazing. I mean, I have seen some of the best there is in the United States and in Mexico. We've gone to some of the finest galleries with pottery, and his can sit right next to it. Those pots are all created by hand. Just little, pots, little pinch, how you used to make little rolls and do this. Honest to be, look at how perfect they are. They're so symmetrical. That's very, very difficult to do. He is not using glazes. He's polishing the clay and making it shine like that. Look at the intricate designs and how they come around and they match, and it's just absolutely incredible. I think He even is processing his own clay. He's going out and getting clay from the ground all over the places, Arizona and all around here, and he makes the clay himself. He's not just going out and buying all this
that
clay
hand-colored clay
already.
there is all New Ulm clay. It all came right out of the ground in New Ulm.
Yeah, and he sits and he draws all these little designs at night, and stuff. And there's no glazes, there's no wheel. It's all hand done. He's just turning dirt into dollars, is what he's doing.
Yeah. And there's a little display about how to do that upstairs. So if you get up there, you'll notice it.
So, dirt into dollars.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It shows
now,
how to do it.
You know, when I married him, I should have known that we were going to be into art. The name Hartzell, Hartzell, art was right in the middle of our name. So I guess that was prophetic.
Center of our life, center of our name, too. So.
And we used to say, another day in the fairy tale lives of Lance and Annette Hartzell. That's how blessed we were, and that's what an adventurous, wonderful life we've had. And if you want to know any more about our cabin experiences or that, we can tell you more.
Our hour is gone.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to make sure that you have time to ask questions. If I think we can hang around a little longer. If you have any questions for our artists right now from the podium, and I also want to let you know that you all get a free print from Annette tonight. See me for that afterwards.
Yes. No, we took photos. We took a lot of photos ourselves, but I worked with a lot of photographers. There were in Alaska, photography is as big as art. Lots and lots of photographers, and I got together with some of the better ones that I found, and I had to pay them for the rights to use their photographs because I couldn't do it all. I couldn't go out in the wild and do all this. We also went to Hawaii about 7 times, and I got to know some of the big Hawaiian art film producers there, and they would be out in the whale. They're out in the water with them, and they would work with me, and I would see them. And it was so we usually whales and some of that stuff. So I had many years of time. Oh, we saw whales, but not underwater. And we saw all of these animals at one time or another, and I photographed a lot of them myself to begin what later on. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We had a lot of experience in wildlife. I mean, we had bears at our cabin. I was standing and drinking my coffee by the window one day, and all of a sudden, a grizzly starts walking by the window, and blonde on his back, the sun was shining on the back of him. I could hardly breathe. It's so exciting. He walks by, and he's just on the other side of the wall. Pretty soon, here comes another one, right behind him. You can't go get your camera because the floor squeaks in the cabin, and sure as the world, if they hear that squeak, they're gone. Pretty soon, here comes another one. So it was a sow and 2 yearling cubs that were with them. It was exciting. That was one of the most exciting things. And
Story of the Three Bears.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. Yeah?
That's a good question. We've talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
You do art because you love art, and I don't know really a really good artist that just does art for the money. Like I've always said, I don't teach for money, but I do get paid.
Yeah.
You know,
You have to
as
live.
I mentioned earlier. And but that's not the reason you do it. So you're doing your art because you like art, and you have confidence that you can do it, but you're never quite sure how it's going to be received, or who's going to be there that needs it, or what that's going to lead to. So you just do it, and kind of do it in a way that people know that you're an artist, you know, so you can do some shows or something like that. And then if there is anybody there who's looking for, you know, somebody to do that for them, then you're going to be available. So, but your question is a good one, because artists have to do art, but they have to make a living. You have to live somehow. And this survived, you know, in the artistic sense, because there was other money besides art that helped. There were times when Annette's art money paid everything, you know, in quite long times, really. And then there were times when my teaching money paid for most things. But we had both, so we could survive in both situations. If we had both been artists and only artists, then we might have starved before we got to the good stuff. And if we had both been teachers, then we would have both been teachers, but financially we wouldn't be near as well off as if one of us was an artist.
I have some suggestions for you as artists. If you're going to be a freelance artist, one of the things you have to do is you've got to find a place where art is selling. And I say find a place where there's tourists, because you've got that turnover all the time. And people want to take something home. Find out what it is that they like in that area. You can't just sit in Mankato and expect that you're going to have this big, prosperous business. It may not work here. You might be able to do it. Don't count on social media. Don't count on Etsy and all these different online places to sell your art. You need to develop personal relationships with people. They love that. I have talked to so many artists who have tried to sell online, and they haven't been able to do it. You've got to get out there, get into a smaller area. When you're online, you're competing with hundreds and hundreds of artists. That's not going to help you. You've got to be in an area where you're only competing with the artists in that area. Develop your name, go to shows, be out there, get to know the people, and pretty soon you will start selling, and I really believe that. So that's just what I think.
It'd probably be good to do both.
Yeah, and get a husband, if you're a woman. Get a husband
who teaches,
who makes some money. Because when you first start, you're not going to be making it. It takes a while. Or if you're an individual, get a day job, because you're going to probably need it to begin with. Do your art in the evening and on weekends and do shows until you see that you can make enough money that you can quit your day job. So you've got to have both of those to begin with. You can't just get out there usually. Now, you are a lot of talented artists. I'm telling you what. I walk down these halls and I see your art and I go, oh, good. These guys, I got to show you something. Okay. This will give you encouragement. This is my first painting. Oh, my goodness.
College. This is college.
I actually painted this in high school at Martin Luther College. I painted it in the basement, in the furnace room of Centennial Hall, because it's the only place I could find that I could put up an easel, and my paint stunk. In those days, they were really stinky, the oils were. Today, they aren't so, but, they don't have much smell to them anymore. But so, if you want to be encouraged, this was my first piece. So. Now, you can see my portraiture has maybe improved just a little bit. But this took time, guys. You're way ahead of the game. I was your age when I did this. Look at what you're doing. You have some beautiful stuff in you. So you're very fortunate to have these wonderful, talented men and women to mentor you and teach you. Take advantage of it, because you've got some real good ones here. Real good ones. Yes. Am I welcome? Yes. Yes, yes, the least. Oh. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I just like to do it. You know, it's and I did mention I got the curiosity got started when I was young in Arizona. We'd find these shards, and I know enough about the pottery there that they didn't have the wheels and that available. They had to do it all by hand. You know, and you think about that. They made beautiful pottery, and they didn't even have electricity or anything. And so I said, I want to try to do that, and I haven't accomplished it yet because I still use a kiln to fire them. And the Indian groups in Arizona and the Mexicans, they make pottery, and some of them, they just fire it in a campfire.
With a bunch of cowden.
Yeah, but they know how to do it, you know, and I've tried to do that. But the thermal shock, when you touch the fire off, you know, it goes up to 1,000 degrees in 5 minutes. And the thermal shock on that pot usually breaks it. Breaks all of mine, in fact. But they know how to do it. But it's just, it's a knack, and you have to know, you know, and they can't explain it to you. You know, they can't say fire it to cone 5 or something like that. They haven't got an idea about cones. They know from experience, and they can show you how to do it, but they can't tell you. So you have to get somebody you have to work with. You have to become an apprentice. And I've never really had that opportunity to do that. But I would like to be able to fire them too, even without a kiln. So you're right. It is the long way and the slow way. And I asked about this way when I was taking pottery classes at MSU. And there was a teacher there at the time. His name was Roy Strasberg. A good man, a fine man. I really enjoyed knowing him, and he helped me a lot. And I think his wife taught some art classes here at Bethany. But I asked him about that, and his answer would go along with yours, Jason. He said, takes too long. Takes too long, it's too much work. So he said, he said, my wife has some information on that stuff. And he actually remembered to ask her for it, and brought me a whole, you know, ream of articles and stuff on it. And that was very helpful for me. So, how long does it take? It takes a while. There's maybe faster ways to do it too sometimes, but making the clay clean itself is the hardest and the longest process. Because when you dig it up, it's got all kinds of organic stuff in it. It's got leaves and sticks and earthworms, and you want to get rid of that. So you put it in a big bucket and mix it all up, break up all the clods, everything in there. Stir it around. Keep stirring it with your hand. You can feel anything breaks up, break it. Water. Yeah. So you'd fill up like a 5-gallon bucket, about a third full of just the clay ore, you might say. And then you fill another third at least or more with water so that it can dissolve everything. And when everything is dissolved, the magic happens because you can just let it sit for a while. Basically, all the organic stuff floats. So it comes right up to the top of the water, and you get rid of it. And everything that's too big to use sinks. So the pebbles, the heavy sand and everything, it goes right to the bottom. And the clay stays suspended for a long time, days sometimes. But it gradually settles down on top of all the coarse stuff. When it does, the water above gets real clear. Then you have to get rid of the clear water. Siphon it off or dip it off carefully with a dipper or something that you don't stir the very fine clay particles, which are easily agitated. Get rid of the water, and then it sits for a month, 2 months, and you just kind of keep checking it. And the water just keeps gradually going away, and the clay gets a little more and more and more and more firm. When it gets to the right point, then you can slice it. And when it's to the right point, it's about the consistency of cheesecake. Okay? And it's like a real thick cheesecake. So what you do, and slice it, just like you would a cheesecake. And then that first slice is the hardest one to get out, just like a piece of pie or a cheesecake. And when you take it out, it looks like cheesecake, chocolate cheesecake. All the sand and the coarse stuff is on the bottom. That's the graham cracker crust. And then the clay, the nice smooth clay, is that, that wonderful creamy inside of the cheesecake. And that's really what you're after. So then you lay the piece of cheesecake over and scrape off all the sand and that, and just keep the clay. And then you know that pure clay shrinks too much, and it's more susceptible to breaking in a kiln. So you have to have something in the clay beside clay. And so you leave a little bit of the real fine sand in there, a little bit of the fine sand for temper. They call it temper. And what that does is it makes the clay really much stronger. It doesn't shrink as much when it dries. And it takes the thermal shock when you fire it much better. It won't break as easily. So I think that's one of the things I have to perfect yet.
We worry about the fire department because you're used to this thing is going, whoa, and I'm afraid the neighbors are going to call the fire department because they see all this smoke and stuff. But part of the problem we think is because we have more humidity than Arizona does. So that causes that's an issue. If we had the pots dry out down there quite a bit before they're put into the fire, and so then they don't have this tremendous shock to them as much as ours do here with the humidity that we have. So we probably would have to do something like dry them out in the oven a little bit before we put them in the fire or something. We'd have to experiment with it, but you know what? I mean, it isn't worth it. He's already gone way beyond what anybody else does. Yeah.
So it is a fairly lengthy process, making the clay and then making the pottery. It takes quite a long time to paint them. That's the next thing.
Tell them what you use to paint. Now, he does paint them.
Yeah, you just paint it before it's fired, and you fire the whole thing. So it's going to get up to about 1,500 degrees when it gets fired. So that's really quite a low temperature. Those pottery students here know it's not real hot, but it's about as hot as you can build a campfire. Really hot. And if you drink beverages out of aluminum cans when you're out camping and you throw it in the campfire, you know that usually the next morning the cans are still there. The paint's burned off of them, but the cans are still there. But if you build a really, 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 really hot fire, it'll burn up your aluminum cans. That's hot enough to fire pottery. So anyway, you put the paint on and then you fire it.
Well, tell them what the paint.
I'm getting it.
Oh.
No, that's right. Thank you for asking.
I was trying to get you to the point.
Yeah, so any paint that you would put on there that you buy at Menards or anything, it's going to burn off, right? Paint is not fireproof. It's going to burn off, so you can't paint it with anything. So what do you paint? Oxide. Iron oxide, copper oxide. They don't burn up. They keep their color. And you mix them with a little bit of clay, and then you can make pottery paint that's a different color than the pot. So that's basically it. It's oxide that you use to paint. Minerals that you can find in the Earth's crust, or you can buy at Minnesota Clay Company, Continental Clay Company at the Twin Cities.
Yeah, but didn't you get yours from a potter out in Colorado? Don't you get some from him?
Yeah, I do.
He's a famous potter, and he makes his own oxides, and you buy them from him?
Yeah, I get some of the paint from Michael Wisner, is the guy's name, and he spent years in Mexico making pottery with the Mexicans.
And they are really hot. Okay.
Thank you for your question.
So, yes.
Professor
This has really been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel vindicated. I feel right. That was a delight. Thank you very, very much. And something that occurs to me is that people are complicated, right? Like, we have to ask the questions to get the... I think Annette learned some things about Lance's process, some things she never heard, like the cheesecake thing seemed to surprise her. People are complicated, and they contain a universe of experience. Take people seriously. See me for one of these. This is the Showy Ladies Slipper, the Minnesota State Flower print. Free for you today. You could take it home for yourself or for someone else who might enjoy it. And then we've got some nice refreshments down the hall. When you get those refreshments, I would encourage you to come back this way because there is so much to see. Come on back and see the art, spend some time with the artist, spend some time with the art, and have a good, safe evening. Good night.